Okay, well, good morning, everybody. This is the second to the last one, so be excited. You don't have to listen to me talk on a Tuesday or Thursday for a couple of hours for a while. So what we are going to be covering today, it should not take the whole 2 hours today. Each one of them is a little short little thing, but we're going to talk about performance, credentials, measurable skills gains, exiting of participants, and success stories. Oops. So under trade, the program performance regulations are at 20 CFR 618.864. Basically what it says is that every state must report to DOL, performance accountability measures, and these are the things that they state. There's primary indicators of performance. There can be an additional indicators of performance if DOL and the state actually negotiate those. And basically a description of efforts that are made to improve any outcomes for participants that are being served under trade during that quarter. And they are submitted quarterly. They're submitted to DOL within 45 days after the end of each quarter. And then there's also an annual statewide performance report that is submitted to DOL. So what are the local actual requirements for reporting information related to performance and these participant outcomes and things? So, your participant engagement, any services or activities, case notes, things like that, they need to be recorded in an appropriate system of record, which ours is the Illinois Workforce Development System, or IWDS. Anything you're working with that participant on and all of that, they should be entered within 10 days. So keep that in mind when you're working with someone. If you have case notes that need to be entered because you're working with them on things, and any services they're getting or any activities, please get those in within 10 days. Any program exit that's submitted, you need to do that within 90 days of no service for that participant. I know we've stressed that to you guys in the past, that we just wanted to reiterate that. There is our exit policy is on the e-policy portal, and we'll cover kind of what those requirements are here in a little bit. Any outcomes that you've recorded, any employment they've received, or any updated education or training information that you have for that person, or any other information related to any kind of an outcome for that participant. Get that in the system within 10 days of you learning of that particular outcome. And grant recipients, which we are a grant recipient of DOL and you are a grant recipient of us, need to report on performance indicators or goals. And this is in your grant agreement that you need to report these items. And we also ask that you submit participant, employer, or any other local type of things related to any success stories that you have in the area, being, for people that are being served by trade. So what are just some key terms and definitions you might hear related to performance? A participant, basically it's an individual, they've received services after they've been determined eligible for the program. A program exit is when that person is exited from the program, and that is the last date that they've received a service. Usually that isn't determined until after 90 days have lapsed, since they did receive their last service. But you need to exit them if they've not received a service within that after that 90-day period, or within that 90-day period. And there's no anticipation for any future services that that person is going to be receiving. Common exit, you'll hear that a lot with the people that you're working with, because our participants that are in trade are required to be co-enrolled in WIOA. So it's a common exit. They will have the same exit date on both programs. And like I said, that 90-day window, if you're not giving them any kind of a service, and it should be an active service, and we'll cover that information a little bit later. And if there's no future services planned for that participant, then obviously they need to be exited. What is employment? They went to work, they're working in a paid, unsubsidized job, working 15 or more hours a week. in an unpaid job on a farm or a business that's operated by a family member or a participant. So just they're employed. Unsubsidized employment is if they've gotten employment in a private sector, public sector, and that employer is not receiving a subsidy for any of the wages related to that participant to offset anything. So like an OJT would not be considered an unsubsidized employment, or an apprenticeship would not either, because they're getting a portion of that paid by the program. So what are the primary indicators of performance? Well, here's the reference for the trade performance language in our trade regulations. One of them is employment rate second quarter after exit. So basically that is the percentage and number of participants who've completed a program, they've gotten benefits and they have obtained unsubsidized employment, and they are employed during the second calendar quarter after they've exited from that program. So this is very important when someone is in your program, they've completed their training, they're done, you're not serving them, there's no more services you can get them, they are employed. Get those people exited as soon as you possibly can, so that when they're employed that second quarter after you've exited them from the program, you can get a positive outcome for that participant for this particular measure. So that is why we stress that exit time frame of that 90 days, because that allows us as a state and you as a local area to you get credit for what you're actually doing with that participant and what you've helped them accomplish in the program. And then there's an employment rate for the fourth quarter after exit. So if they retain their employment and they're still working and it's the fourth quarter after they've exited, there's another positive outcome for that particular participant. So entering these, especially when they become employed after they've completed training and that, just get them exited if you're not going to be serving them. So we get these positive outcomes for both as a state and a local area. You're getting credit for what you've actually done with the program. Just keep that in mind. One of the other primary indicators is median earnings. They take all of the earnings for all of those participants that are in unsubsidized employment, and they make a list of them, and then they take like the middle one. And that's the median earnings measure. Credential attainment. That is basically the people how many have earned credentials as a result of their participation in the program. Now, this does not include OJT or customized training, but anybody who does achieve a credential, and this credential can be earned within 1 year after they've exited the program. So if you do have someone who, you've exited them and then they earn their credential within 1 year after they've exited, get that in the system. Because, as soon as you know about it, because it does count as a positive outcome for performance. So what are some types of credentials? There's a secondary school diploma or recognized equivalent. It's usually like a GED or HSE, high school equivalency is what I've heard it called too. Or there's post-secondary educational credentials. You're getting like associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, graduate degrees, some sort of occupational license that they have achieved, some sort of a certificate, occupational certificate, and that includes registered apprenticeships or any career and technical education certificates, some sort of an occupational certification, or anything that a certificate or whatever that would indicate completion where they can qualify for an entry level or some sort of advancement in their employment. Now, there is a special rule related to the actual secondary school diploma. If you have someone who's exiting with a high school diploma or equivalent only, then there's an additional condition that they must meet within 1 year after they exited for them to count as a positive outcome or successful outcome that's included in the way they calculate this measure. They either have to be employed or enrolled in the education or training program that leads to the credential within 1 year following exit. I know it's confusing, but just keep in mind that they do need to be employed or enrolled in an education program after they've exited to be a positive outcome for this. And make sure you record that outcome in IWDS. So I want to go to another document before we go on here. I'm going to try to cover each piece separately. So we're talking about credentials. So I want to cover how you can enter credential in IWDS. And please take notice of this note that credentials, you can't enter them on the trade application and they automatically transfer over to the WIOA application. You do need to enter them separately on both applications for a co-enrolled participant. So how you would do this is on the application menu for either the trade or the WIOA. So you're going to do it on both. So I don't have both in here. I just got one sample of how you would do this. But on this application menu, you're going to click on this credentials. I got some blank pages. Where's all my pages? All right, well, okay, well, hold on a minute. I don't know if the document you received today is blank like that. I will go back and check that later. Let's try this one. Okay, so here you click on credentials, and then you are going to click on add credential at that point when you get to the list credentials screen. And you're going to complete all of the information here. And I have put on here the specific information that shows up on the drop downs for each of these. Here are the credential type, credential options that you can pick from. In the institution, you would just put the name of the training institution that actually awarded the credential. The source options, the third box, here are the type of options that show up from the drop-down list. For the date attained, you're going to enter the date that's on the actual credential of when the institution awarded it to that participant. And a description of the credential or diploma. Just put a little description, like if you pick, bachelor's diploma degree. In the description, just kind of put what kind of a degree was it. It's, like a bachelor's in accounting or a bachelor's in liberal arts, whatever it was, something about, or an occupational field, things like that. Just be descriptive. And then once you've completed all of the fields there, then you're going to click save here. You can see I've got some information in here. And then you'll see that the credential has been added to the credentials screen. And when you're doing this, this is a case management service. So add all of your case management services like you have before. You're going to go to your list enrolled service. You're going to click on the trade case management service or the WIOA career planning service that's out there, depending on which application you're on and which one is applicable. This would be for the trade if it's anybody being served under a petition 97,999 or below. So this would be the trade, and you're going to add an additional episode, and that will just take you over here to the add case note. You'll fill in your information here, the case note about, what, participant earned credential entered in IWDS, could be your note for that. And then it'll update your end date for your case management service. For if you're doing it on the trade, for those participants, there would be nothing entered on the WIOA application other than the credential as well. And then if it's a WIOA, then if they're served under 98,000 and above, a 2021R participant under trade application, there would be no entry for the case management. And on WIOA, you would do the same thing. You're going to click on your list enrolled services. You're going to click on the career planning case management service record, add additional episode, and enter all of your data here along with your case note. One thing I want to note about credentials as well, Upon exit of the participant, then make sure you do enter those credentials on that exit control panel screen as well. I believe you can do that before they're exited, but you do want to put in, you know, the credentials that they've earned as a part of this program, as a part of that exit thing. And to do that, you click on your exit summary screen, and then you will click on update for the credentials section. And then you're going to pick the credential that you've entered as the one. So you should enter your credential first, then go over here and you'll pick the credential, is where it will take you when you click on this update. So pick the appropriate credential that's applicable for what they've earned during the program time. And then once you pick that, then the system is going to ask you if you have, you know, this credential is the one that you have picked. Is this correct? So you would click pick credential if it's correct. If not, you would hit cancel and go back to this screen and pick the appropriate one. And then once you have completed that and you do say pick credential, then you'll see that this credential has been added to this exit control panel screen. And that's just how simple it is to do the credentials. So just make sure that you enter them very timely as soon as you have them or that they can get them. Most areas do have documents that are signed by the participants that it gives them, you know, it's like a release of information document. So that release of information document should allow you to contact the training provider or whoever issued that certificate or credential so you can obtain that information if the participant is not being forthcoming and providing that information for you. Okay, so let's go on. And I see some people commented that yes, they did receive all of the pages, so that's good. I don't know, maybe my system was just being crazy today. Christine has a question. Do we have to add the credential on the WIOA record exit screen in addition to on the trade exit screen? I will have to get back to you on that, Christine. I'll have to touch base with the performance folks and the IT folks for IWDS. We'll respond to that question on the Q&A when we post it. I would say potentially yes, but you know, I don't know how the system works on that as well for like the exit part. So for measurable skill gains, this is something new that came about a few years ago in WIOA and trade. It's, you know, it's something that we can keep track of as the person is progressing through their program. You know, what kind of skill gains are they obtaining during the process through their training? So basically, a measurable skills gain measure. It measures the percentage and number of participants receiving benefits from trade, and it also is under WIOA as well, but this is specifically training geared towards trade, so that's why I reference trade. And during the time that they're in training or receiving the benefits, or they're in an education or training program where they're going to get a credential or it's going to lead to employment, that they're achieving some sort of a gain in their skills towards that credential or employment while they're doing that program. So there's 5 types of measurable skill gains. There's educational functioning level, or they call it EFL. Oh, I see Paula Berry is on here. Thank you, Paula. She is one of our performance folks, and she's answered Christine's question. So thank you, Paula. I didn't know if you guys were going to be able to be on here because they had a conflict with another meeting. So I'm glad to see they're here. There is a secondary school diploma or equivalent. There's a secondary or post-secondary transcript or report card, training milestones, skills progression, which could be a diploma, certificate, or a degree. So what is the educational functioning level? This is like documented achievement of at least they've increased one educational functioning level for someone who is getting instruction in, you know, a training program that is below the post-secondary education level, like some remedial type of training. And then how you would document that so you can enter that in the system is either your pre and post test results that measure for that EFL gain. And also there's post-secondary education or training enrollment determined through data match, survey documentation, or program notes. I don't understand how all of this documentation works or what all is required. If you guys do have questions specifically related to some of these areas, we're going to direct you directly to Mark Burgess or Paula Berry. They are the performance folks, and there's a slide later with their contact information. But we just wanted to provide you some information about it. This is very high level. And Susan and I are not the experts, but we just wanted to make sure to remind you that these things do need to be entered in IWDS for your participants you're serving under trade. There's a secondary school diploma or equivalent. That's just, you know, that documented that they've attained that. You know, it's basically they obtain a certification that they've received passing scores on all parts of a high school equivalency test, or they've gotten a diploma, or, you know, they've satisfactorily completed something. The documentation is some sort of a result of, you know, like some exam, a certification of completion, something that documents that they did complete that. A secondary or post-secondary transcript or report card, that basically is just a copy of their transcript or report card that shows that they've achieved the policies for academic standards for that particular semester. A post-secondary transcript report card, there's a couple of things here. Full-time students, they must achieve a minimum of 12 credit hours within one semester. And if they're part-time, it's 12 credits, you know, and this is kind of in accordance with the institution standards, but it's in 2 consecutive semesters within that 12-month period. And there's a little caveat here, like if the first semester begins in one program year and the second semester ends in the next, then that measurable skill gain would be achieved in the second, the program second semester ends. And again, you would just need a copy of the transcript or report card and documentation of whether that participant is in full-time or part-time enrollment. The secondary, post-secondary transcript report card, there's a couple of rules related to that. The report card just cannot show that that participant was dropped out of school, they were removed from the institution, or any other condition that might indicate that they were removed on some sort of academic or conduct grounds. And any kind of reasonable verification of this will meet that requirement. You know, it can be even an unofficial transcript or something that you've obtained online. So there's a training milestone as one measurable skill gain. That is just satisfactory or better progress report towards established milestones. You know, they completed an OJT, they've completed a year of an apprenticeship program, you know, or some other kind of milestone from either an employer or a training provider that is providing them those benefits and services. The progress report must document that they have substantive skill development to measure, to put this as the measurable skill gain that they have received. Skills progression, a diploma, certificate, or degree. They have passed an exam, they've completed their training, they've obtained this diploma, certificate, or degree. You know. So a couple of things that need to know about measurable skill gains. Participants do need to achieve at least one skill gain each program year that they're participating and enrolled in training in order for it to count as positive for performance sake, for performance purposes. You should record any MSG that the participant does obtain, regardless of the fact that only one is counted per year. Just record everything that you can regarding their skill gains that they do achieve. They're not exit based, so participants included in the measure each program year that they participate in trade and are enrolled in training or education. So make sure you just keep entering those as they are earned. All right, so let's go to how do you enter a measurable skills gain? Okay, let me try this other thing. For some reason, my PDF documents don't want to come up today and be shared. So we'll just outsmart the computer, maybe. So again, with like with credentials, the measurable skills gains, they do have to be entered on both the trade and WIO applications separately. They don't transfer between one to the other. So to enter the measurable skill gains on the application menu for both applications, you click on measurable skills gain, and then you're going to add a skill gain when you get to the list measurable skill gain screen. And you'll see too on this measurable skill gain screen, there are the testing information is also included on that screen. So you're going to complete the information. There's a skill type, and you'll notice that the skill types are listed below and what the requirements are for them. And then you're going to do the date the skill was attained and a comment. And then there's a box here to verify. So for skill type, I've listed here, the dropdown does include these 4 measurable skill gain types. And note that the educational functioning level will not be included in the dropdown for skill type because it's calculated by the system. So you won't see that one. The date the skill was attained, put the date that they attained it, must be a valid date of today or earlier, and they must reflect the date that the documentation shows that's in the file. There's a note here, about the program year, so keep that in mind when you're entering that information. For the comment box, use that particular space to note any kind of the type of documentation you have in the file, and their achievements or progress related to the skill type that you've chosen. The verification, you're going to check that box to certify that that participant does meet the requirements of that skill gain and that you have one type of documentation in the file that verifies that gain. And you'll notice, like I said, at the bottom of the screen, there's the different types of documentation required to verify each type of skill gain. If you need some more information, Teagle 1016 change 1 page 19 does list the different skill types and the documentation that is needed to support those skill gains that you're entering. And when you're done completing it, you're going to click save to save the record. And then it will take you back to, so you see I have a screen filled out here and the verification, click save, and it will take you back to your list measurable skill gains and it will show what you have entered. And you're going to do your case management services again, just like for the credentials. It's, depending on which program, which certification they're being served under will determine which case management you enter. If, for instance, you have entered an incorrect item and you notice it, again, you'll have to do it on both applications. If you've entered it incorrectly on both applications, what you do is go into the measurable skill gains, and on that particular screen, you're going to select the one that you've entered in error, and then it's going to pull that up. So you click on view for that particular one, and then it has an option here to delete. And then what it'll do is it's going to ask you to confirm that deletion. So, either delete or cancel, and then you'll see after you've hit delete that it does remove it from the measurable skill gains. So if you do that afterwards, like you discover it later, after you've kind of done all that, then you would need to enter your case management services again. If you notice it at the same time you're doing it, then there was no need to enter an additional case management service, but it's just if you do it later. So that is how you do the measurable skills gains. Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, so let's go back to, let's talk about our general requirements for program exiting. An exit must occur when a participant has not received any active services funded by the program that they're enrolled in or another partner program for 90 consecutive calendar days. They have no gap in service and they're not scheduled for future services. This is the WIOA e-policy where this information is, and here's the site for the e-policy. And I'm going to go through that document here. And I'm going back and forth today, but I didn't want to take the stuff from the document and put it in here when there's a separate document already there. And I did pull this information. This is directly from the e-policy portal. So that's all I've done here is just produce those documents. So here are your general requirements for program exit. It's chapter 3, section 3 on the e-policy portal. Again, it has to be within, after 90 consecutive calendar days. You can exit them sooner if you know that they don't have any services that they're going to be receiving in after that, whatever period of time, or so how you do that, and then there's some stuff here. If you do have an exit record entered and they do receive a new service, then what you will have to do is have that exit deleted, and you would contact, if it's a trade participant, contact Susan and I, send us an email, and Lori Graham, and then we will communicate through Paula and Mark Burgess to have that exit removed. If you do send it directly to Paula and Mark, they will send it to us to make sure that it's okay to do that process first. So like it says here, the written request. So I'm not going to cover all of this, but you guys can read this about this part here, that they can't have a new application if they've received an active service within 90 days, all of that kind of stuff. So there's some stuff you need to read on this. I'm just going to highlight a few things that we want you to know. So the date of exit is applied retroactively back from the current date to the last date on which that participant received an active program service funded by either WIOA or trade. And if they do receive services from multiple programs and they're co-enrolled, then whatever the most recent service date, end date that they've received from either program, that will be the date of exit. We have the co-enrollment and exit section that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. If the participant does have a planned gap in service, then you don't have to exit them, but and it has to be due to one of these items here. If they have a delay before they begin their training, there's some health or medical condition for themselves or a family member, or they've temporarily moved from the area so they can't participate in services right now, including military. So keep in mind, the planned gap cannot last more than 180 consecutive calendar days from the date of the most recent service. And if that person has no services for 90 days, they have no gap in service as outlined up here in number 4 and 5, and they're not scheduled for any future services, then you need to do the exit. So here's some information. Prior to entering an exit record, you need to do these things right here. Make sure the services have been recorded and closed with the appropriate end date, completion status. You've got all your supporting documentation and it's located in the file. Case notes are entered. You have your credentials in the file and you've recorded them in the system. Your measurable skills gains are recorded and you've got the documentation for those. And the exit record includes 1 school status at exit and 1 exit reason. And there are some exclusions from performance indicator reasons. Paula can talk about those if you have questions about any of those. And please note that a separate exit reason is required for each co-enrolled program. Once you've gotten all those reviews, you have all of this documentation, then you should exit the participant. Make sure you enter your credentials or employment, job records, and especially on that exit control panel screen, enter any of that information that you have for that participant on that. So that is the policy. I mean, I've attached it as a document that you can look over. You can also go to the policy portal to get it. So for the co-enrollment and exit, like I said, the co-enrollment exit occurs when that participant, they're enrolled in more than one program. They have not received services from either program for 90 days, and there's no future services planned. And here's the WIOA policy, which we just covered. So a lot of people ask, what is an active service? You know, an active service must be provided to a participant, and it has to have taken place within 90 consecutive calendar days. We'll cover these in a minute. The WIOA policy 3.3.1 has the program services definition, and that's one of the documents I provided to you as well. And TEGL 1016 change 1 attachment 7 has a list of the adult and DW participant level services chart. So it discusses what are active services. So let's go through a few documents here, so you can see my mouse cooperates. So let's look at first the program services definition. And I know some of you have seen this from us as a result of a technical assistance review, where we have found someone who may not have received a service within 90 days, and we're recommending you review it for exit. So basically, you know, active service, you know, follow-up services are not considered active services. So keep that in mind. I want to highlight that the area that I really want to highlight is here, number 4, number 5 actually. The term active program service does not include any determination of eligibility to participate in the program, any kind of self-directed job search that doesn't result in a referral to a job, and any services and activities specifically provided as follow-up services, such as regular contact with the participant or employer only to obtain information regarding their employment status, educational progress, need for additional services, or income support payments, except for TRA allowances and other needs-related payments funded through the trade program, DW program, or dislocated worker grant program, or case notes or fiscal records showing payment for support services. So this is very important. There are so many times that we see people entering a case note that says case note supporting same-day service, and all you have done is send them a flyer for some sort of event you're having, or you say that you called and left a message for that person for asking them if they need additional services, something like that. Stop doing that, because that is not considered an active service. So we need you to be very mindful of this, because what happens is we've had people who actually completed their program. They, you know, they've got a degree, they went to work. They would have been a successful outcome if they would have been exited in a timely manner. And now, because it's a year later, 2 years later, or whatever, they're not really a successful outcome at that point, because they might have lost that job or something. And so we can't get credit for that, and you can't get credit for that report. They're employed second quarter after exit or fourth quarter after exit. So these people need to be exited timely. You can't just hang on to them forever. You've got to provide services, or there's no need to have them in the program. Unless you're aware of some special thing related to them, they have some gap in services that they need to, you know, have a break in the training, then that's fine. But just make sure you communicate that with us. The co-enrollment and exit, you know, there's a document that I provided to you for that, on how to process those, and specifically what are follow-up services. You guys can look those over and see what type of things are involved in that. I do want to cover this Teagle that shows the active services. So it says we owe a Title I adult and DW because these are the services under DW when you co-enroll them on trade that would be termed as an active service. I mean, trade services are, the case management, the training, the specific things related to trade, but there are a lot of services that are provided under dislocated worker once they're completed with the trade that would count as active services. So you can see here, there's the service type over here. Does it trigger inclusion as a participant? Yes or no. The category of the service and the Pearl element number, that probably doesn't mean anything to any of you at this point, but it tells the type of service and things like that. So I believe, I don't know, Paula, if you're still on here, maybe you can put in the chat. So if it does say yes in this column, I mean, is that actually considered like so how do we determine what's an active service from this chart? I'm assuming if it's a yes in this trigger inclusion as a participant, that would actually be considered an active service. Yes. Okay. Paula did answer that yes. If yes is in this second column, does this service trigger inclusion as a participant? If it's yes, that is an active service. So if you're entering something that says no in that column, that is not an active service for a participant. So, that would not be something you would enter as a same day service type of thing in the system. Obviously, this is not all the services as it says on the chart, but if you do have questions on if something you're trying to do is an active service or not, you can reach out to Paula. She would be the one that would be the expert on this. Susan and I can assist as much as we can, but we are not familiar with all of the performance and all of the requirements and all of that for some of these things. But if we don't know, we'll reach out to Paula and get an answer for you. So for co-enrollment and exit, it's chapter 3, section 3.3. It basically talks about how you need to coordinate all of that. You can have co-enrollment in youth and adult programs. For co-enrollment of trade participants, you must co-enroll them. We require co-enrollment into DW. If it's appropriate, they could be co-enrolled in adult or youth. I doubt we see too many youth because a lot of them will not be within the age requirement for youth when trade, but it could happen. It is potentially possible. And they, you kind of coordinate the services between the two. A lot of times they'll be given a DW service, like transportation when trade can't pay that transportation for them, or some sort of childcare assistance or things like that. Sometimes we can share the cost of training under unique circumstances. We do require, and it is in the regulations, that trade is the primary source of assistance for trade participants if it's a service or a benefit that can be paid by trade. If it's something trade doesn't pay for, then WIOA can pay for it. So this kind of walks through all of the stuff on how you would handle the co-enrolled and co-enrolled exit. We've talked about this, they're enrolled in multiple WIOA or trade programs. They've not received a service for 90 days, no future services planned. So, just these are good resources, and they are available out on WorkNet under the ePolicy portal. Just keep them in mind when you're trying to work with these participants and you're trying to exit them, and you need to know, oh, what was that? And I know the active services or program services definition did mention about follow-up services cannot be considered an active service. So what is a follow-up service? So that is regular contact with the participant, some two-way communication. that basically it's just follow up, like, how are you doing? What, how's your job? Do you need any more assistance? That kind of thing. Follow up should be, it's for anyone who enters, DW enters unsubsidized employment, it's 12 months. But this walks through how you would handle any follow-up services for a participant. Okay. Now, so let me go back and cover the last part of the PowerPoint. Which is success stories. I recently listened in on a training. There was a kind of just a DOL call. They're going to be sending out soon a request for success stories from the states. Basically, a success story just shows how, the programs are making a difference in participants' lives. They've successfully completed their program. They've got a job. They're, doing well. How did it help them reach their career, training, or employment goal? And you enter success stories on WorkNet. We have a presentation that I did attach on how you do that. But success stories are very important because it kind of shows what, we get credit for what we've done, things like that. And, they are looking this year for particular success stories. They said that kind of center around, or that could show, we want all success stories that we can possibly get. But if you have a participant, for instance, who was attending training in person and it switched to online, and how did that affect them? How did it affect their progression through the program? But they ended up being successful anyway, even though they had to switch the whole way of learning. Things like that. They're looking for kind of focuses on people who were able to do that kind of thing, or any kind of local area innovations in how you changed your focus and how you started working with those participants on a more virtual level versus the in-person. What kind of innovations did you do? Any kind of great things out there that have been done to maybe improve the interaction with the participants, or it's worked really well and things are great. So anything you can get to us, we would appreciate it. Enter them on WorkNet, and I'll go through this document on how to enter them in a moment. If you do need more information on the performance training and how it works and how they calculate it and all that kind of thing, there is some more detailed information on performance accountability, the requirements, how the measures are calculated. The performance unit has done some recent training that is located at this site here. I put a few pieces of information from their training information in my PowerPoint because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, but there is a lot of detailed information on their particular presentations that they did. I think there's a series of 4 or 5 of them. Be sure to look at those if you want more information. It goes through how they calculate them and a lot of information on that. And I'm no expert on performance. That's Paula and Mark. Here's some additional websites you can gain some information on trade. Here's, of course, the DCEO trade contacts. Here are the contact information for Mark Burgess and Paula Berry. The best way to reach them would be via email. And then your IDES trade unit contacts if you would need them for anything. And our last training is coming up on Thursday, which is on the TAPR, GRS, appeals, fraud, overpayments, and monitoring. Any additional training that you feel is needed, please reach out to us and let us know. And our training recordings and stuff are located here. I believe the performance stuff is there too. Let me go cover let me show you the success story, how to enter a success story. And I'm no expert on this part either. This is a PowerPoint that was put together by WorkNet. I'm just going to kind of walk through it. If you do need further assistance, reach out to Susan and myself. And if we need to, we will involve WorkNet on how to do this. But this just walks through how to submit a customer success story. Okay. So here's like some updates. So now they're including trade. They're auto-populating the customer information, and they're creating specific URLs for each success story. Okay, so it's kind of the importance of success stories, you know, for your customers. They can see what other peers are doing, you know, connect with others that might be in the same situation. It shows how other customers have succeeded, and it provides credibility for the program. You know, gives credibility to the program. Yeah, we are doing what we're supposed to do, you know, and your organizations that are running them. It gives others hope that the program can work for them too, and it highlights aspects of the program that work best. So here's like a sample of a success story that's out there. We use them for our annual reports, and that's what DOL does as well. And we've had some of our own Illinois success stories included in the DOL annual report in the past. So there's a success story guide on WorkNet. Here is how you would find that information. So this is, there's participants, employers, or service providers, and there's success stories for any of those. Like I said, I'm not an expert on this. I didn't do this PowerPoint. This is just something I got from WorkNet to make sure. But you can see that this does walk you through how to enter the success story, how you would go through and do it. You do have to have the WorkNet ID. Like I said, I didn't do this, but I just wanted to provide it so you could kind of see that it does walk you through how to enter a success story. So please use that as a guide and a tool to do enter any success stories that you have. We really need any that you've got. We've gotten a few. And so we have a question. Can a youth be co-enrolled if it is a pre-apprenticeship program? The youth will also be on a paid work experience. Is that allowable trade? We'll have to get back to you on that, James. We'll respond with and when we do the Q&A that we post, we'll have to do some research on that. That's basically all I have today for you. Are there any questions from anybody else or anybody? I hope you were able to gain some information. The keys to take away from today are make sure you enter your credentials and your measurable skills gains timely. Exit your participants when there are no services within the last 90 days or no services upcoming that are planned, or they don't have a planned gap in service for some reason. If you do have specific questions, you can reach out to us. But when it comes to performance and exiting, we do not generally provide guidance on that. We will reach out to Paula and Mark to get their expert guidance on the particular customer's situation and how it should be handled. But if you do know you're not going to provide any services to that participant and you know they're done, then definitely get them exited so you can get the credit for the measures that can be positive for your organization and the state as a whole and that participant. So I guess if there's no more questions, I guess that's it for today.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheila. And thank you to everyone who attended this morning. We will get this recording up on Illinois WorkNet for anyone who wasn't able to attend if you want to forward it along. And then we will see you on the 13th for our last training.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.